just watched half of a documentary, panorama documentary from last night, about the SAS and their operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the SBS. And obviously, typical BBC, let's just demonise our special forces, let's demoralise our troops, let's put all sorts of unsubstantiated accusations to them, and let's use actors to play the parts of the supposed soldiers that are giving the information. Now, whether any of the stuff that these soldiers were saying is true or not is not particularly relevant to this video. But what I will say is this: I'm not going to comment on what did or didn't happen in Iraq or Afghanistan, because I wasn't there and I don't have a clue. But what I can say is, as everyone knows, I served in the military in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. I'm well aware of how much graver the situation was in Afghanistan at the time that the SAS and SBS were doing these high-tempo operations. Same in Iraq. Time of the surge in Iraq, time of the major casualty count, if you like, from the British Armed Forces in around 2010. So when special forces are deployed, they're deployed pretty much for one purpose, and that's killing bad guys. Now, whether they went across the line and did things they shouldn't have done, I genuinely don't know. But nothing is ever as cut and dry as people make it out. And I remember reading a book by Mark Urban about the special forces. It's kind of a brigade made up of Navy SEALs, Delta Force, SAS, SBS, and some other special forces from around the world, operating mainly around Baghdad, in other areas, mainly around Baghdad, to stabilise Baghdad during the surge. And these guys were hitting doors every single night. Now, in Northern Ireland, when the SAS were deployed, there would be maybe one operation every 6 months, maybe a little bit more than that, maybe it's a little bit less, but it wasn't like they were just hitting doors every single night. And again, when we're talking about hitting doors, we're not talking about smashing doors and arresting people, smashing doors in, and on the other side of the door, there's a guy with a suicide vest or a guy with a PKM anti-aircraft machine gun putting rounds down through the door. That's what was described in the book. And again, Mark Urban's a very, very respected journalist, BBC Newsnight. I think he left BBC Newsnight because I think even the wokeness probably got too much for him. But the reality is that book is a very well-written book and describes in graphic detail exactly what was going on. It was horrific, and the SAS and the SBS were taking casualties, killed, injured, and so on. So again, it's very easy for journalists and lawyers to sit in their ivory towers and look down their long noses at what's happened in a faraway country in the middle of the night, in a war zone, when you're in a situation of kill or be killed. So this is the point, though. In Northern Ireland, so this is part of the UK now, in Northern Ireland in 1992, there was a very famous SAS ambush where some IRA men from, I think it was the East Tyrone Brigade, and I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe these are the same guys that blew up the army barracks I was in Turnhill in 1980, I think it was 1989. I believe members of this ASU were some of these guys that were actually in Turnhill. Putting all that to one side, the SAS mounted a capture or kill, I suppose, operation. Of course, you wouldn't be able to call it that officially, but that was the situation. You either capture the guys or you kill them. And the ambush went off, and I think they killed 2, 3, 4 maybe terrorists out of a fairly sizable ASU that had been operating in that area and were going to attack a police station with, again, a heavy machine gun, an anti-aircraft machine gun. So it's very interesting that the week after, or the day the coroner's report on that incident suggests prosecutions, the BBC and Panorama put out a documentary demonising the SAS and the SBS. And call me a conspiracy theorist. I never used to be a conspiracy theorist, but now I've seen so much, it's not really being a conspiracy theorist, it's just predicting what's going to happen, and then it becomes a conspiracy. And the reality is, I think that the SAS and the SBS and the British Special Forces are probably an inconvenient truth. And as technology improves and the British Army's just got this Ranger Regiment that they've raised, they're probably going to try and downgrade our Special Forces. and use these incidents as an excuse to do that. Remember, after the Second World War, the top brass of the military did not like the SAS, and they were disbanded for a couple of years. I think they only came back probably around the time of Malaya or Borneo, I think. So that's my theory. That's my theory. And it's very interesting that the day after the BBC's latest hit piece on British Special Forces, the day after that, remember, this goes right the way back to Death on the Rock in the early 1990s, late 1980s, early 1990s, when there was documentaries alleging all sorts of stuff about the operation in Gibraltar that basically wiped out an ASU that was intent on blowing up a band parade in Gibraltar. So the BBC's got a long track record on this, but it's very interesting that the Panorama team didn't bother to do a documentary about the 400 ISIS operatives who came back to the United Kingdom and are walking free. Who knows what crimes they've committed? Who knows what heinous, vile, disgusting crimes were committed in Syria, Iraq, all those Kurdish regions. We know what happened. We know what happened. We know that women were taken as concubines, were taken as slaves for men's desires. We know that there was wholesale murder of Shia, Alawites, Christians, Yazidis, anybody who didn't fit with the IS theology and the IS doctrines. You were gone, or you were made to live in the most oppressive conditions. And these people that were part of that state, it almost feel like being part of the Nazi party in the Second World War, have been allowed to come back to the United Kingdom. They haven't been charged. Not one of them has gone to prison. So you have people that were involved in the most extreme fascistic state since the 1940s come back to the United Kingdom and roam freely, and goodness knows who they're influencing or who they're talking to. And this shows the hypocrisy, because what Panorama should be doing, they should be finding out who these people are, doing proper investigative journalism, and sending teams to knock these people's doors and shine a camera on them saying, what exactly were you doing in Syria and Iraq between 2013 and 2015, or whenever ISIS's little reign of horrendous slaughter was going on? But of course, no, it's far easier, it's far more convenient to pick on our heroes. And that's what they're doing. They're demonizing, attacking, and picking on our heroes. So to me, it's very, very simple. What we've got to do, we've got to get a grip of our media. And that's part of the reason I'm doing this channel, Counter Media. We've got to highlight where our media is failing. And if our media is getting it wrong, we've got to out them. We've got to let people know. And again, like we did when we made those films in 2020, and obviously because of this channel, I can't say what they are, but let's just say ROB, everyone will know what I'm talking about. When we made those films, we made it with a very, very small and unique team. And that's what people in our movement need to get back to. We need to get back to making low budget, but very, very hard-hitting films about the issues that are facing our country. Could we do a film on these people that's come back from IS territory? Very unlikely. We wouldn't have the resources to do it. But there's other stuff that we can do. And I think we should start doing that. Anyway, put all that to one side. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do. Please like and subscribe. I'm going to try and build this channel up, because as the channel builds, and obviously the plan I've got is when I start getting revenue from the channel from AdSense or from YouTube, then I'll be able to invest more in the channel, invest in equipment that'll mean I'll be able to get out round. I'll be obviously based in Northern Ireland. I can go down to the south of Ireland as well. Get out, try and show people what's happening over here and how we're being affected by government policy and what the unique situation in Northern Ireland is compared to what's happening in England and on the mainland. Anyway, enough of that. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I'd love to get this up to 10,000 subs in very short order. I think we're about 2,800 and something. So let's get up to 10,000 in short order, and let's see if we can get this going as a really, really good channel. And what I want to do, I want it to be very, very high integrity. I want it to be very, very positive, even though today's story isn't particularly positive, but it's a story that has to be told. And it has to be explained to people that there's always an agenda. When these things come out, particularly about British Special Forces, there's always an agenda behind it. And we've got to really dig in and see what that agenda is. And I do believe that there are people in the higher echelons of the military, some of these woke idiots that are running the military, and obviously in the Labour Party, who would be quite happy to see our brave Special Forces disbanded. And we need to fight against that as civilians and veterans, tooth and nail. See you all soon.